Follow your heart, for it knows the treasure you seek. Nia Carter's voice, warm and steady, filled the quiet library of the Chicago mansion, her words from the Alchemist weaving magic for Lily and Sophie, who sat on either side, eyes closed, hands clasped as if in prayer. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated Nia's radiant brown skin and her long black hair tied in a low bun, a picture of calm amidst the storm of grief that lingered in the Hammond home. Victor, the billionaire father, would soon return unannounced, his world of logic shaken by this tender scene. A simple maid's choice to read a book of dreams would unravel a tale of healing, challenge, and love, transforming a broken family. Stay until the end to discover how Nia's quiet strength reshapes their lives. Subscribe and share where you're listening from. Let's connect in this journey of hope. Follow your heart, for it knows the treasure you seek. Nia Carter's voice, warm as a summer dusk, spilled into the hushed library of the Hammond Mansion in Chicago. Her words, drawn from The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, wove a spell over Lily and Sophie, the 6-year-old twin daughters of billionaire Victor Hammond. The girls sat on either side of Nia on a plush velvet rug, their small hands clasped as if in prayer, eyes closed, faces serene under the soft glow of an antique brass lamp. Nia's radiant brown skin seemed to catch the light, her long black hair neatly gathered in a low bun, a beacon of calm in the storm of grief that still clung to the walls of this grand home. The twins, once so withdrawn they'd shrink behind furniture when guests arrived, now leaned into her voice, their shy hearts unfurling like petals under her care. The library, with its towering oak shelves and scent of old leather, was a sanctuary within the sprawling estate. Crystal chandeliers hung silent above, and outside the October wind whispered against frost-kissed windows. Nia's voice rose and fell, each word a gentle thread stitching the girls' fragile hopes together. Lily's lips curved faintly as if she could see her mother, Clara, in the story's promise of dreams. Sophie's clasped hands tightened, her breath steady, as though the words carried her mother's presence closer. For 2 years since Clara's death, the twins had been shadows, whispering only to each other, avoiding strangers, their laughter a rare ghost. But Nia, with her quiet strength and love for stories, had begun to change that, her readings offering a bridge to a world where grief could soften into hope. Unseen in the doorway, Victor Hammond stood frozen, his polished shoes silent on the hardwood floor. The billionaire, just returned from a grueling week in Singapore, had expected to find his daughters asleep, not enraptured by a maid reading a book far beyond their years. At 38, Victor was a man carved from discipline, his tech empire built on logic, his life a fortress of schedules and control. His sharp jaw was set, his dark eyes narrowing as he clutched a leather briefcase, the weight of jet lag and unresolved sorrow heavy in his bones. Clara's absence was a wound he kept bandaged with work, but seeing his daughters so absorbed, so changed, stirred something he couldn't name. Anger, fear, or perhaps both. "What the hell are you reading to my children?" His voice sliced through the room like a blade, sharp and cold. The twins' eyes snapped open, their clasped hands dropping as they flinched. Nia's breath caught, but her gaze met Victor's, steady despite the tremor in her chest. She closed the book gently, her fingers lingering on its worn cover. "Mr. Hammond, I didn't hear you come in," she said, her voice soft but unshaken. "I was reading The Alchemist. It's about following dreams, finding purpose. The girls love it." Victor stepped forward, his 6'3" frame casting a shadow over the rug. "This isn't a philosophy seminar," he snapped, tossing his briefcase onto a nearby armchair. Papers spilled out, unnoticed. "They're 6 years old, Nia. They need fairy tales, not whatever this is. Dreams? Purpose? That's not what I pay you for." His words were a storm, each one laced with the grief he refused to face. The twins shrank back, Sophie clutching Lily's sleeve, their newfound ease replaced by the old fear that had defined them since Clara's passing. Nia rose slowly, smoothing her simple navy dress, her composure a quiet defiance. "I'm sorry if I overstepped, sir," she said, her tone earnest. "Lily and Sophie were asking about their mother, about where she might be. I thought this story could help them feel her in a way. It's helped them open up, talk more." Even smile. She gestured to the girls who looked up at her with wide, trusting eyes. They're not as shy as they were when I started. They're starting to feel safe again. Victor's jaw tightened, his hand slicing the air. Safe? You think filling their heads with fantasies about destiny makes them safe? This is my house, Nia. My rules. No more of this nonsense. Stick to children's books or you're out. The threat hung heavy, his voice low but venomous. Lily whimpered softly, and Sophie's lip trembled, but they stayed silent, their eyes darting between their father and Nia. Nia's heart ached, not for herself but for the girls, whose fragile progress felt at risk. She knelt, touching their shoulders gently. It's okay, sweethearts. Let's get you to bed. Her voice was a lifeline, calm and steady. The twins nodded, rising reluctantly, their small hands brushing Nia's as they shuffled toward the door. Victor watched, his anger faltering for a moment as he saw the trust in their eyes, not for him, but for her. As Nia guided the girls out, she paused, glancing back at Victor. I didn't mean to upset you, Mr. Hammond. I just wanted them to feel less alone. Her words were soft, but they carried a weight that lingered in the air. Victor turned away, his gaze fixed on the library's dark windows, the reflection of a man wrestling with a pain he couldn't outrun. The library fell silent, save for the faint howl of the wind outside. Nia's footsteps faded down the hall, the twins' soft whispers trailing behind. Victor sank into an armchair, his briefcase forgotten, the open page of The Alchemist staring up at him from the rug. He didn't touch it. Not yet. But something in that moment, a flicker of doubt, a crack in his armor, whispered that this book in these quiet nights might unravel everything he thought he knew. And in that unraveling, a family broken by loss might find a way to heal. The Chicago mansion woke to a brittle dawn, the October light filtering through heavy drapes, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Nia Carter moved quietly through the kitchen, her hands steady as she prepared breakfast for Lily and Sophie, the 6-year-old twins whose world had been upended by their mother's death 2 years prior. The scent of cinnamon oatmeal filled the air, but Nia's thoughts were heavy with Victor Hammond's ultimatum from the night before. Her radiant brown skin glowed under the soft morning light, her long black hair still neatly bunned, yet her eyes held a flicker of resolve. She wouldn't let his anger dim the spark she'd kindled in the girls, who had begun to emerge from their shells, their once constant shyness giving way to tentative smiles and whispered confidences. Lily and Sophie shuffled in, their pajamas rumpled, their faces still soft with sleep. They climbed onto stools at the marble island, their small frames dwarfed by the grandeur of the room. Miss Nia, Sophie whispered, her voice barely audible, can you read us more of the dream book tonight? Lily nodded, her eyes bright with hope. The one about the treasure, it makes me feel like Mommy's listening. Nia's heart clenched. She saw how the twins, once so guarded they'd hide from even the kindest visitors, now sat close, their clasped hands and closed eyes during readings, a quiet ritual that brought them peace. We'll see, sweethearts, she said gently, brushing a curl from Lily's forehead. Let's eat first. Upstairs, Victor paced his study, the click of his polished shoes sharp against the hardwood. His phone buzzed relentlessly, emails from his tech empire's board, pressing him to finalize a deal that could relocate the family to London. The idea had seemed logical in Singapore. A fresh start, a new market, a way to outrun the grief that clung to this house like damp rot. But now the memory of his daughter's serene faces as Nia read to them gnawed at him. He'd built a fortress of routine to protect them, yet they seemed to find solace in a book he deemed frivolous. His jaw tightened as he overheard their breakfast chatter, Sophie's voice carrying a lightness he hadn't heard in years. It stung, that lightness, because it came from Nia, not him. He descended the grand staircase, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the cozy chaos of the kitchen. Girls, finish up, he said, his tone clipped. You've got school soon. His eyes flicked to Nia, who was wiping down the counter, her movements deliberate. Nia, a word. She followed him to the hallway, bracing herself. The twins watched, their spoons pausing midair, sensing the tension. I meant what I said last night, Victor began, his voice low but firm. No more of that book. It's filling their heads with nonsense. Dreams, treasures, things that don't exist. They need structure, not fantasies. His words were a wall, built from the fear that letting go of control meant losing Clara all over again. Nia's gaze held steady, though her hands twisted the dish towel. "Mr. Hammond, I respect your rules," she said, her voice calm but unyielding. "But Lily and Sophie aren't the same girls they were when I started. They used to hide from everyone, barely spoke, and wouldn't even look at their teachers. Now Lily shares stories at school, and Sophie invited a friend over last week, her first in years. That book, those moments when they sit with me, eyes closed, hands clasped, it's helping them feel their mother, not forget her. It's making them brave again." Her words landed like a soft blow, piercing Victor's armor. He saw the truth in her eyes, but it clashed with his need for order. "You don't decide what's best for my daughters," he snapped, though his voice wavered. "You're here to clean, to cook, not to play therapist." Nia flinched but didn't back down. "I'm not trying to, sir. I'm just giving them a safe place to feel. That's all they need right now." Victor turned away, his chest tight. He wanted to argue, to assert his authority, but the image of his daughter's clasped hands lingered, a silent rebuke to his rigidity. Later that day, as Nia walked the twins to the school bus, Sophie clutched her hand, whispering, "Miss Nia, you won't stop reading to us, will you?" Lily's eyes, wide and pleading, echoed the question. Nia knelt, her smile a quiet promise. "I'll always find a way to tell you stories, okay?" The girls nodded, their trust in her a weight she carried gladly. Back at the mansion, she found Victor in the library, staring at the copy of The Alchemist left on the rug. He didn't look up as she entered, but his voice was quieter now. "They're different with you," he said almost to himself. "I don't understand it." Nia hesitated, then spoke. "When I was a girl, I lost my sister. Stories like this one, they gave me a place to put my pain. They let me dream again. Your girls, they're starting to do that too." Victor's fingers brushed the book's cover, his expression unreadable. He didn't respond, but the silence wasn't hostile. It was heavy with something unspoken, a crack in the wall he'd built around his heart. As Nia left to prepare dinner, the mansion seemed to hold its breath. The twins' laughter echoed faintly from the garden, a sound Victor hadn't noticed in too long. He stood alone, the book in his hand, its weight more than paper and ink. Outside, the Chicago wind howled, carrying the promise of change, whether he was ready for it or not. The Hammond mansion stood silent under a gray Chicago sky, the October chill seeping through its grand windows. Inside, the air was thick with unspoken tension, as if the walls themselves held their breath. Nia Carter moved through her morning routine with quiet precision, her radiant brown skin catching the dim light as she dusted the library shelves. Her long black hair, neatly bunned, swayed slightly as she worked, but her mind was elsewhere, on Lily and Sophie, the 6-year-old twins who had begun to find solace in her readings of The Alchemist. Their clasped hands and closed eyes during those moments, a ritual that felt like prayer, had brought a flicker of peace to their grief-stricken hearts. But Victor Hammond's sharp rebuke still echoed, his demand to stop reading the book, a heavy chain around her efforts to help the girls heal. In the twins' shared bedroom, Victor knelt beside a small wooden desk, sorting through a pile of crayons and crumpled papers. He hadn't meant to linger, only to tidy up before a conference call, but a small notebook caught his eye. Sophie's, its cover adorned with glittery star stickers. He opened it, expecting childish doodles, but instead found pages filled with careful, wobbly handwriting. "Follow your dream, like Santiago, to find Mommy in the stars." One line read, the words copied from The Alchemist. Below it, a drawing showed 2 stick-figure girls, hands clasped, standing under a sky bursting with stars. A woman's face, smiling faintly, hovered in the clouds. Victor's breath hitched. Clara, his late wife's memory, so carefully locked away, stared back at him through his daughter's eyes. He turned the page, his fingers trembling. Another entry in Lily's scrawl. "My treasure is Mommy's laugh. Miss Nia says we can find it if we listen." The words pierced him, sharp and unrelenting. Since Clara's death, Lily and Sophie had been shadows, hiding from guests, whispering only to each other, their laughter a distant memory. But here in these pages was proof of change. They were opening up, their shyness melting under Nia's gentle care. The thought both warmed and unsettled him. He'd built a world of structure to protect them, yet it was Nia's stories, her forbidden book, that seemed to be bringing them back to life. Victor clutched the notebook, his tailored suit feeling too tight, his disciplined world cracking at the edges. He descended the staircase, the mansion's grandeur a hollow backdrop to his churning thoughts. In the kitchen, Nia was slicing apples for the twins' lunch, her movements steady despite the weight of Victor's warning. The twins sat at the island, giggling as they stole apple slices, a lightness Victor hadn't seen in years. "Girls," he said, his voice softer than intended, "can you tell me about this?" He held up the notebook, open to Sophie's drawing. Lily's eyes widened, and Sophie froze mid-bite. "It's our treasure book," Sophie said, her voice small but clear. "Miss Nia says everyone has a dream, like in the story. Ours is about Mommy." Lily nodded, her curls bouncing. "When we close our eyes and hold hands, it's like she's here. It makes us not so scared." Victor's throat tightened. Scared. He hadn't realized how deeply their fear ran, how his own distance had left them clinging to Nia's warmth. He turned to Nia, who stood still, her knife poised over an apple. "You told them to write this?" he asked, his tone caught between accusation and awe. Nia set the knife down, her gaze steady. "I told them to write what they feel, Mr. Hammond. The Alchemist talks about following your heart. It's helped them talk about their mother, to feel her without hurting so much. They're not hiding anymore. Lily told a story at school last week, and Sophie played tag with friends. That's new." Her words were a quiet challenge, her brown eyes unwavering. Victor's grip on the notebook tightened, his mind a battlefield. He wanted to lash out, to reinforce his rules, but the girl's words, "not so scared," echoed. He thought of Clara, her laughter, her belief in dreams he'd dismissed as impractical. "This stops now," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "No more Alchemist, no more of this dream nonsense. They need reality, not fairy tales." The twins' faces fell, Sophie's lip trembling. Nia's expression didn't falter, but her hands clenched the edge of the counter. "Reality hasn't made them smile, sir," she said softly. "They're starting to heal because they feel safe to dream. I'm not trying to replace their mother. I'm helping them carry her." Victor's chest ached, her words striking too close to the grief he buried under boardroom deals and late-night emails. He turned away, unable to meet her gaze or the twins' pleading eyes. That evening, as Nia tucked the girls into bed, Lily whispered, "Will you still read to us, Miss Nia?" Sophie's hand clutched hers, their trust a fragile thread. "I'll find a way," Nia promised, her voice a lifeline. Alone in his study, Victor opened a locked drawer, pulling out a letter Clara had written before her death. Her familiar handwriting trembled on the page. "Let our girls dream, Victor. Don't cage their hearts." He sank into his chair, the notebook still open beside him, Sophie's starry drawing a silent accusation. For the first time, he wondered if his rules were protecting his daughters or pushing them further away. The Hammond mansion stood like a fortress under Chicago's brooding October sky, its marble columns and arched windows masking the unease that simmered within. Nia Carter moved through the dining room, setting the table for dinner, her radiant brown skin catching the flicker of candlelight. Her long black hair, tied in its usual low bun, framed her calm demeanor, but her heart was heavy with the weight of Victor's ban on The Alchemist. Lily and Sophie, the 6-year-old twins, had retreated into their quiet shells since that night, their newfound openness, born from Nia's readings, fading like a half-remembered dream. Once they'd begun to share stories at school and giggle with friends, their clasped hands and closed eyes during Nia's readings a bridge to their late mother, Clara. Now Victor's rigid rules threatened to sever that fragile connection. In the kitchen, the twins sat at the island, coloring silently, their crayons scratching softly against paper. Nia glanced at them, her chest aching. Sophie's drawing showed a starry sky, her small hands trembling as she whispered, "Miss Nia, can we read the treasure book again? It makes Mommy feel close." Lily nodded, her eyes pleading. Nia forced a smile, her voice gentle. Soon, sweethearts, we'll find a way. She couldn't bear to tell them their father's orders, not when their clasped hands during those readings had brought such peace, coaxing them out of the shyness that once kept them hidden from the world. The doorbell's sharp chime cut through the quiet, startling Nia. She smoothed her apron and opened the heavy oak door to find Evelyn, Clara's older sister, standing on the porch. Her sharp features were framed by a sleek bob, her navy blazer and pearl earrings screaming calculated elegance. Evelyn's eyes, cold and appraising, swept over Nia with a sneer. "You must be the maid," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Is Victor home?" Nia's spine stiffened, but she nodded, stepping aside. "He's in his study, ma'am." Evelyn's heels clicked across the marble foyer, her presence like a storm cloud rolling in. Victor emerged, his tailored shirt slightly unbuttoned, a rare crack in his usual polish. "Evelyn," he said, surprise lacing his tone. "What are you doing here?" Evelyn's smile was thin, her eyes glinting with something predatory. "I thought it was time to see my sister's children," she said, her voice syrupy but sharp. "It's been too long." Victor's jaw tightened. Evelyn hadn't attended Clara's funeral, hadn't called in years, her estrangement rooted in bitter arguments over family inheritance that Clara had confided in Victor about before her death. Her sudden interest felt like a blade held too close. In the dining room, Nia served dinner, her ears tuned to the conversation drifting from the study. Lily and Sophie ate quietly, their usual chatter stifled by the stranger's presence. Nia caught Sophie's eye, offering a reassuring nod, but the girls' hands clasped together under the table, a silent echo of their reading ritual. "Miss Nia," Lily whispered, "she doesn't feel nice." Nia's heart sank. The twins' intuition, honed by grief, was sharp. She knelt beside them, whispering, "You're safe, okay? I'm right here." In the study, Evelyn's voice grew sharper. "Those girls need structure, Victor, not some maid filling their heads with fairy tales. Clara would have wanted them with family, real family. I'm prepared to take them, or at least share custody." Victor's response was low, controlled. "You haven't seen them in years, Evelyn. You fought with Clara over money and ignored her when she was sick. Why now?" Evelyn's laugh was brittle. "Because I'm their aunt, and I know what's best. A boarding school in London would shape them properly, not this sentimental chaos." Nia, clearing dishes nearby, froze. London. The word hit like a stone. She thought of Lily and Sophie, their fragile progress, Sophie playing tag with friends, Lily sharing a story in class, all thanks to the peace they found in the alchemist's words, their clasped hands a quiet prayer to their mother. Uprooting them now would shatter that. She stepped closer to the study, her voice steady but firm. "Mr. Hammond, moving the girls would hurt them. They're finally opening up, feeling safe. They need this home, not a boarding school." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her tone venomous. "You're the help, not their mother. You don't get a say." Victor's gaze flicked to Nia, a storm brewing in his dark eyes. "She's right about one thing, Nia," he said, his voice taut. "This is my decision." But his tone lacked the venom of before, a flicker of doubt softening his words. Nia held her ground, her brown eyes unwavering. "I'm not trying to decide for you, sir. I'm speaking for Lily and Sophie. They're not the scared girls they were. They're healing." Victor turned to Evelyn, his voice cold. "You don't get to waltz in and disrupt their lives. You're not their family. You forfeited that when you turned your back on Clara." Evelyn's face hardened, her voice a hiss. "We'll see about that, Victor. Clara and I reconciled before she died. She wanted me involved. You'll hear from my lawyer." She swept out, her heels echoing like gunshots. The twins, overhearing from the dining room, ran to Nia, their small arms wrapping around her. Sophie's voice trembled. "Is she taking us away?" Nia knelt, holding them close. "No one's taking you anywhere, sweethearts. You're home." Victor stood in the doorway, his face a mask of resolve and fear. Nia met his gaze, her voice soft but firm. "They need you to fight for them, Mr. Hammond. Not just in court, but here." She gestured to the twins, their hands clasped, eyes wide. Victor nodded, a silent vow forming in the quiet, as the mansion braced for the storm Evelyn had unleashed. The Hammond mansion felt heavier under the weight of Evelyn's threat, the Chicago wind rattling the windows as if echoing the unrest within. Nia Carter moved through the evening routine with quiet resolve, her radiant brown skin catching the soft glow of the kitchen lights as she prepared hot cocoa for Lily and Sophie. Her long black hair, tied in its familiar low bun, framed a face etched with determination. The twins, once shadows who hid from the world, had begun to bloom under her care, their shyness giving way to tentative laughter and shared stories at school. But Victor's ban on the Alchemist and Evelyn's looming custody battle cast a shadow over their fragile progress, threatening to pull them back into silence. In the twins' bedroom, Nia tucked them in, their small forms nestled under star-patterned blankets. Lily's eyes, wide with worry, searched Nia's face. "Miss Nia, will you read to us tonight?" she whispered. Sophie nodded, her hands already clasping in anticipation. The treasure book makes it feel like mommy's here. Nia's heart ached, knowing Victor's rules forbade it. She pulled a worn copy of The Velveteen Rabbit from the shelf, her voice gentle. "Let's try this one tonight, sweethearts." As she read, the twins sat on either side, eyes closed, hands clasped, their ritual unbroken despite the change in story. Their breathing slowed, a peace settling over them, as if Nia's voice alone was enough to anchor them to their mother's memory. Victor stood in the doorway, unnoticed, his tailored shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his face a map of conflict. He'd spent the day fielding calls from his lawyer about Evelyn's custody claim, her accusations of his neglect stinging more than he'd admit. But it was the sight before him, his daughters, once so withdrawn they'd flinch at his touch, now calm and trusting in Nia's presence, that cracked something deep within. He stepped inside, his voice softer than it had been in days. "They're different with you," he said, almost to himself. Nia looked up, closing the book. "They're different because they feel safe, Mr. Hammond," she replied, her tone steady but kind. He sank onto the edge of Sophie's bed, his hands clasped tightly. "I owe you an apology," he said, the words heavy, unfamiliar. "I was wrong to snap at you about the book. I thought control was the only way to keep them safe. But you've given them something I couldn't." Nia's brown eyes softened, but she didn't interrupt. "When Clara died," he continued, his voice low, "I thought if I kept everything structured, they wouldn't feel the chaos I did. But I see it now. They need more than rules. They need this." He gestured to the twins, their hands still clasped, their faces serene. Nia nodded, her voice quiet. "When I lost my sister, stories were my refuge. They let me feel her without breaking. Lily and Sophie, they're finding that too. When they sit with me, eyes closed, hands clasped, it's like they're reaching for Clara. It's not about the book. It's about letting them dream again." Victor's gaze dropped to the floor, her words unearthing a truth he'd buried. He thought of Clara's laughter, her belief in the intangible, things he'd dismissed as impractical. "I don't know how to do that," he admitted, his voice raw. "Be the father they need." "You're already starting," Nia said, her smile small but warm. "Just be here. Listen to them." She rose, tucking the blankets around the twins, who stirred softly in their sleep. Victor watched, a flicker of resolve igniting in his chest. "Wait," he said as she reached the door. He pulled The Alchemist from a nearby shelf, its cover worn from the girl's eager hands. "Read this to them tonight. I'll listen." Nia's eyes widened, but she nodded, taking the book with a reverence that mirrored the twins' ritual. She sat between their beds, the twins stirring awake at the familiar weight of her presence. "And when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it," she read, her voice a soothing current. Lily and Sophie sat up, instinctively settling on either side, eyes closing, hands clasping, as if the words wove a thread to Clara's memory. Victor leaned against the wall, his heart pounding as he listened, the story's cadence softening the edges of his grief. For the first time, he didn't fight the ache. It felt like a step toward his daughters, not away from Clara. As Nia finished, Lily murmured, "That's Mommy's treasure, isn't it? Helping us be brave." Sophie nodded, her voice sleepy. "Miss Nia makes it easier." Victor's throat tightened, his eyes burning. He stepped forward, kneeling beside them. "You're right, sweetheart," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I'm going to try harder to help, too." The twins smiled, their trust in him a fragile gift he vowed to protect. Later, alone in his study, Victor opened a locked drawer, pulling out another of Clara's letters he'd found that morning. Her handwriting danced across the page. "If a kind soul comes to guide our girls, don't push her away, Victor. She'll show you what I can't anymore." He clutched the letter, Nia's voice still echoing in his mind. Evelyn's threat loomed, but for the first time he felt a flicker of hope. Not just for his daughters, but for himself. The mansion, once a mausoleum of grief, hummed with the promise of something new, if only he could let it in. The Chicago courthouse loomed under a slate-gray sky, its stone facade as unyielding as the tension that gripped the Hammond family. Inside, the air was sterile, heavy with the weight of bureaucracy and whispered arguments. Nia Carter sat in the gallery, her radiant brown skin a stark contrast to the drab wooden benches, her long black hair tied in a low bun, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her simple navy dress belied the strength in her eyes, a quiet fire that had carried Lily and Sophie through their grief. The twins, safe at home with Victor's sister Carolyn, were unaware of the battle unfolding, a battle to keep their fragile, healing world intact. Evelyn's custody claim, rooted in her alleged reconciliation with Clara, threatened to unravel everything Nia and Victor had built. Victor stood at the plaintiff's table, his charcoal suit crisp but his face etched with exhaustion. The past weeks had been a whirlwind, late-night meetings with his lawyer, Caroline's support with old family photos, and Nia's unwavering presence as she wrote a testimony of the twins' progress. Lily and Sophie, once so shy they'd hide from strangers, had blossomed under Nia's care, their clasped hands and closed eyes during readings of The Alchemist, a ritual that anchored them to their mother's memory. Sophie now played with friends at school, and Lily shared stories in class, their newfound openness a testament to Nia's gentle influence. But Evelyn, with her sharp tongue and selfish motives, loomed like a storm cloud, her claim fueled by old grudges over Clara's inheritance and a desire to assert control. The courtroom buzzed as Judge Renata Hall, a middle-aged woman with a commanding yet maternal presence, called the session to order. Evelyn's lawyer spoke first, his voice smooth and calculated. Ms. Evelyn Carter claims a familial bond, supported by conversations with her late sister Clara, who expressed a desire for her involvement in the children's lives. A boarding school in London would provide the structure they need, far better than the unconventional influence of a maid. The jab at Nia stung, but she kept her gaze steady, her heart focused on the twins. Victor's lawyer countered, presenting photos of Lily and Sophie laughing in the garden, their drawings from Nia's readings, and a letter from their school noting their improved confidence. Then Victor stood, his voice steady but raw. "I haven't been a perfect father," he admitted, his eyes flicking to Nia. "I buried my grief in work, thinking rules would protect my daughters. But I was wrong. Lily and Sophie were lost, hiding from everyone, barely speaking. Nia changed that. She gave them a safe place to feel their mother, to heal. They're thriving now, not because of me alone, but because of the home we've built together." His words carried a weight that silenced the room, his vulnerability a stark contrast to the billionaire facade. Nia was called next, her steps measured as she approached the stand. Her voice trembled at first, then grew firm. "Lily and Sophie were shadows when I met them. Scared, withdrawn, grieving their mother. I read The Alchemist to them, and when they sit with me, eyes closed, hands clasped, it's like they're reaching for Clara. They've found peace in those moments, and it's changed them. Sophie plays with friends now. Lily tells stories at school. They're not afraid to feel anymore." She held up a drawing from Sophie, two stick-figure girls under a starry sky, with the quote, "Follow your dream like Santiago to find mommy in the stars." "This isn't about replacing Clara," Nia said, her eyes locking with the judges. "It's about carrying her love forward." Evelyn's face tightened, her pearls glinting as she leaned forward. Her lawyer pressed Nia, questioning her qualifications, but Nia's calm resolve held firm. "I'm not their mother," she said, "but I love them, and love is what they need to keep healing." The courtroom fell silent. the weight of her words settling like dust in sunlight. Judge Hall reviewed the evidence, her expression unreadable. Hours passed filled with legal arguments and cross-examinations, but Nia's testimony and the twins' drawings lingered. Finally, the judge spoke, her voice steady. Ms. Carter, your claim is noted, but the court prioritizes stability. These children are thriving in their current home, a home built on love and intention, not just blood. She turned to Victor. Mr. Hammond, you've shown commitment to your daughter's well-being. The petition for custody is denied. Evelyn's face paled, her hands clutching her purse as she stood, silent, and left the courtroom without a word. Outside under the gray sky, Victor exhaled, the tension draining from his shoulders. Nia stood beside him, her eyes glistening. Thank you, he said, his voice low. You didn't just save them today. You've been saving them all along. Nia shook her head, her smile soft. We saved them together. Later at the mansion, Caroline greeted them with hugs, the twins' laughter echoing from the garden. Victor pulled Nia aside, his voice earnest. Stay with us, Nia. Not as a maid, but as part of this family. Nia's heart swelled, but she only nodded, the weight of his words a promise yet to be fully unwrapped. The mansion, once a hollow shell, pulsed with the quiet strength of a family holding fast against the storm. The Hammond mansion glowed under the soft November light, its Chicago stone facade softened by the golden hues of late autumn. Inside, the air hummed with a warmth that hadn't existed before, a quiet pulse of renewal that seemed to seep into the walls themselves. Nia Carter stood in the kitchen, her radiant brown skin catching the morning sun as she kneaded dough for cinnamon rolls, her long black hair tied in its familiar low bun. The scent of sugar and spice filled the room, a comfort that anchored Lily and Sophie, the 6-year-old twins who had once hidden from the world. Their laughter, once a rare whisper, now danced freely, a testament to Nia's gentle care. The twins' ritual of sitting beside her, eyes closed, hands clasped as she read The Alchemist, had woven a thread of peace through their grief, pulling them from their shell of shyness into a world where they could smile and share stories with friends. Lily and Sophie burst into the kitchen, their socked feet skidding on the hardwood, their faces bright with anticipation. Miss Nia, is it story night? Sophie asked, her curls bouncing. Lily clutched a drawing, a starry sky with 2 stick figures holding hands. We want the treasure book again, Nia smiled, wiping flour from her hands. Tonight's special, sweethearts. We'll read together, and maybe Daddy will join us. The twins squealed, their trust in Nia a beacon that had guided them through the storm of Evelyn's custody battle, now a fading shadow after the court's ruling. Victor entered, his usual tailored suit replaced by a soft sweater, a sign of the man he was becoming, one who lingered in moments rather than rushing to boardrooms. The victory in court had unshackled something in him, a willingness to let go of control and embrace the messiness of love. He watched Nia with the twins, their ease a stark contrast to the days when they'd shrink from his touch, too scared to speak. You're spoiling them with those roll, he said, a rare playful note in his voice. Nia laughed, her eyes warm. Good. They deserve a little sweetness. That evening, the family gathered in the library for their new tradition, story night. The room, once a silent shrine to grief, now glowed with string lights and a crackling fire. Nia sat on the rug, the Alchemist open in her lap. Lily and Sophie on either side, their hands clasped, eyes closed, as if reaching for Clara through the words. When you want something, all the universe conspires to help you achieve it, Nia read, her voice a soothing tide. Victor sat nearby, not in his usual armchair but cross-legged on the floor, his presence a quiet vow to be part of their world. The twins' faces softened, their ritual bringing a peace that had helped them bloom. Sophie now led games at recess, and Lily's stories captivated her classmates. Victor took a turn reading, his voice halting but earnest, the words new to him but heavy with meaning. The boy looked at the stars, knowing his treasure was closer than he thought. Lily whispered, "That's like Mommy, right? She's close, even if we can't see her." Sophie nodded, her voice soft. "Miss Nia makes it easier to feel her." Victor's throat tightened, his eyes meeting Nia's. For the first time, he didn't flinch from the ache. He let it sit, a quiet companion to the warmth in the room. Days later, Nia stood in the mansion's unused carriage house, now transformed into the garden room, a reading center she'd dreamed into reality with Victor's support. The space was alive with color, bookshelves lined with stories, windows letting in streams of light, and hand-painted wind chimes made by local children. It was a sanctuary for kids like Lily and Sophie, a place to find solace in words. At the opening, the twins ran through the room, claiming a reading nook by the window, their laughter mingling with the chatter of neighbors. Victor gave a short speech, his voice steady. "This is Nia's vision, a place for dreams to grow. She's given my daughters more than stories. She's given them hope." That night, under a starlit Chicago sky, the family sat in the garden, blankets draped over their shoulders. Sophie looked up, her voice small. "Miss Nia, does Mommy hear our stories?" Nia knelt, her smile radiant. "She hears with love, sweetheart, not ears." Lily tugged Victor's sleeve. "Daddy, you're reading with us now. That's Mommy's treasure, isn't it?" Victor's eyes glistened, his hand finding Nia's. "Yes, it is," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And you're mine." As the stars blinked above, the mansion pulsed with a new rhythm. Victor began writing stories for the twins, weaving memories of Clara's laughter and love for dreams, each word a step toward healing. Nia, no longer just the maid, had become the heart of their home, her quiet fire lighting the way. The twins, once shadowed by grief, now shone, their clasped hands and closed eyes, a testament to a family reborn, not perfect, but whole. This story of Nia, Victor, Lily, and Sophie reminds us that healing blooms in the quiet moments, through stories, trust, and the courage to dream again. It's a testament to the power of love that mends broken hearts, showing that family is forged not by blood, but by those who stay and listen. Nia's gentle strength and the twins' clasped hands inspire us to embrace both grief and joy, finding hope in the smallest acts of care. Share your thoughts below. What moved you most? Where are you listening from? Your stories connect us all. Thank you for joining this journey of heart and renewal. Until we meet again in the next tale, keep dreaming, keep healing, and keep loving.